I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Sebastian Banescu. He's the founder or co-founder of Chain-Proof Digital Asset Insurance Limited, the world's first licensed insurer for non-custodial smart contracts and slashing risks. He's also the managing director of QuantStamp Germany GmbH. He holds a PhD in computer science from the Technical University of Munich. And before joining QuantStamp, Sebastian worked as a security specialist at large enterprises such as BMW, Philips, and Deloitte. So Dr. Banescu, please, you can go ahead.
Thank you for the introduction. Like I said, I have a short intro slide with pretty much the same information that you mentioned, maybe just with an additional timeline. So I started my career in the security industry back in 2011 as a pen tester. And I quickly fell in love with this, this sort of like industry and continued with different aspects or different sides of the security spectrum. Like I switched to Philips to be like a more like defending, and then did a PhD. And then in 2018, I discovered, and I didn't discover, I switched full time to this Web3 space, so the crypto security space. And yeah, I've been here ever since, and I'm loving it. But enough about me. I wanted to give you a brief glimpse of what we're going to be talking about today. I'm not sure how many people in the room are already familiar with decentralized finance. Can I have a show of hands?
Yeah, so we have a webcam, so at least the people in the center. It seems like there's not too many people. But yeah, just maybe raise your hand. Okay, yeah, so we're pretty new to this.
Okay. Cool. So then it's good that I added a bit of an intro to decentralized finance. And then we're going to, dive into the main part of dissecting the exploit of this DeFi protocol called Kyberswap Elastic. And at the end, I'm just going to give a set of conclusions, lessons learned, and strategies to mitigate these kind of exploits. So let's start with the first one. This, is a big picture of like the grand scheme of a DeFi architecture. DeFi is short for decentralized finance, and what it is it's basically a set of financial services that you can offer through smart contracts on the blockchain. And you have primitives such as, stable coins, algorithmic stable coins, or, fiat-backed stable coins. I'm not sure. Do you see my mouse or not?
Yeah, we can see the mouse.
Okay. So you have algorithmic stable coins such as USDC. You have your traditional cryptocurrency, which is indicated as digital assets like Bitcoin and Ether, or even NFTs. Then you also have asset-backed stablecoins. So maybe you have a stablecoin backed by fiat currencies like the dollar or the euro. And you can have stablecoins backed by more volatile assets like Bitcoin or Ether. And all of these assets can be, deposited into wallets. Wallets are typically they have an off-chain component, which is maybe like a browser extension or some user interface, which allows you to access your wallet. And they have an on-chain component, which basically is like a wallet. You can see it as at a very abstract level as a public-private key pair, right? And the public key is also on Ethereum known as your address. So it's the address where people can send you funds. And the private key is what you use to access your wallet. And if someone has your private key, they can basically take all your assets. So I'm not sure if you've heard about this. Maybe you've seen it on social media, but it's very commonly said in crypto, not your keys, not your crypto, right? So if you give away your keys, someone can just steal everything. On top of this, on top of these assets and these wallets, what we see is applications or decentralized applications or dApps, which, at the basic level are decentralized exchanges, lending platforms, derivative platforms, and even decentralized insurance platforms. And on top of these, you can build aggregators. So you can do a DEX aggregator, which allows you to swap like between two tokens. And the aggregator's job is to find the best prices and the best, like multi-exchange swap, which is going to give you like the highest return for your swap. And you also have asset and yield management, where these are protocols that select the best strategy to invest your crypto from your, like you as a crypto holder may have crypto in your wallet, but maybe you want to earn some yield on those cryptos and not just leave them in the wallet. So what you would like, the easiest thing to do would be to maybe deposit it in this kind of yield management system, which there are many of. And they think of the best strategies and update the strategies in order to deposit into some of these exchanges or lending platforms or derivatives in order to earn high yield for you. And you basically can sit back and just enjoy the profits. And on the side here, we have auxiliary services such as oracles, like price oracles. Maybe some of you have heard of Chainlink, which is a very famous price oracle. You have indexing and queries and storage, right? And this is done, maybe like decentralized storage, like Filecoin, or it's maybe centralized. And one thing I should have started with, at the base layer here, everything is running on the blockchain, which is a distributed ledger. So yeah, this is in a nutshell, like, or at an abstract level, what decentralized finance is. It's basically, financial services that we have in the traditional world, just implemented using smart contracts on the blockchain. So people have been coming up with equivalents of stuff that we have in the traditional financial world and putting it on the blockchain. And this has proved to be a very successful use case for public blockchains so far. And, in order to measure the success, actually first, before we measure that, let me see what's going on here. Okay, there was an animation here, but I see it's gone. Each arrow was supposed to appear one by one, but unfortunately, I don't know what happened there. But here we can see a user, John, on the left-hand side, who has a wallet and has some Ether in it. And disregard, please, the conversion rate here. But let's assume that 1,000 Ether is equal to $500,000. And John, what he can do, instead of just holding his Ether in the wallet, he can deposit it into a smart contract. And he deposits his Ether, his 1,000 Ether, and in exchange for that deposit, he can take out a loan. And the loan is over collateralized, which means that the deposit in Ether should be much higher or significantly higher than the amount that he's taking out as a loan. And this is how in crypto you can do lending. It's by doing over collateralized lending, where your collateral is locked with a smart contract, and you need to pay an annual interest rate, and you have to maintain a healthy collateralization ratio. So let's say John doesn't want to sell his ETH because he thinks this ETH is going to be worth even more in a few years. So he wants to keep it, but he also wants to be able to borrow some stable coins to have some liquidity. And therefore, he deposits his ETH. He takes out this loan of 250,000 USD worth of cryptocurrency and stable coins. What he can do now is he can, let's say, take 100,000 and send it to his centralized exchange account, such as a Coinbase account, and then also send it outside in the real world to his real bank account. And now he can use that, $100,000 to buy something in the real world, like a car or something else, whatever he needs, or food, With the rest, he can, reinvest it into DeFi. And depending on his strategies of investment, he might be earning a very good yield on the crypto. So, there's people making 30% a year. If he makes more than he's supposed to pay back as interest, he might have a profitable business and be able to pay his loan back without needing to send money to his bank and to his Coinbase account, right? And that's sort of the idea between DeFi. You have like assets on chain, you have assets in the real world. It can be on centralized exchanges, and you can send them to smart contracts in order to earn yield. So that's sort of the idea here. Now, in terms of statistics, at the moment, this is from March 21st, so yesterday, there was $105 billion worth of crypto assets deposited over all of the DeFi protocols, which are, at this point, there are thousands of DeFi protocols out there. On this chart, you see, how the deposits have evolved over time. So these deposits are also proportional to the cryptocurrency prices. So you can see that back in 2019, there was very little deposited. It was just a few million, and it slowly grew. And at the highest point in the last bull market, which I think the peak was probably somewhere in November 2021, we saw over 200 billion worth of crypto assets deposited. This dropped in 2022 due to all of the I don't even know what to call it, incidents that happened in 2022 with several large projects crashing, and even like US exchanges crashing because they were embezzling money from their end users. And this led to a huge crash at the end of 2022, or actually starting in the mid of 2022 and even going towards the end. And now we're seeing, after everything has been sort of dealt with, and we've seen criminal charges being pressed against, the players who have led to that previous crash. We're seeing an uptick now in the market. So it's grown, the deposits have grown again. Now, all of this is fueled by smart contracts. So smart contracts are just programs that are executed on a virtual machine, like the Ethereum virtual machine, or EVM. And contracts have functions. They're just like a class. You can see a smart contract as a class in an object-oriented programming language like Java, and it has functions, or methods. And when you want to interact with a contract on chain that is deployed on chain, what you do with your wallet is that you call a function of that smart contract, and this changes the state of the EVM. And these state changes often involve transfers of funds. So the EVM is, like I said, a big distributed ledger that keeps track of the accounts of all of the wallet addresses, all of the users of Ethereum. And whenever someone calls a smart contract, they perform a transaction which changes the state of the EVM. So it basically sends some types of assets from one address to another, right? And in one block, you can have multiple transactions, right? And each block therefore makes several changes to the state of this virtual machine. Now, we all know that programs anywhere in the world, they contain bugs. And in this context of smart contracts and the Ethereum virtual machine, exploiting bugs in programs such as smart contracts leads to stolen or frozen funds directly, right? So it's not like in the traditional web 2.0 space where if someone hacks a website, they, there's a database that is leaked or tampered with, or a website that is defaced, and someone puts some kind of defamatory images on the website or something like that, or someone sells the data on the black market, or someone gets access to credit card data that they then have to use themselves in order to actually get, like funds. In this case, if you exploit a smart contract, you directly get the assets that you can, exchange and take out, through some sort of medium, and you can use in the real world, right? So bugs in smart contracts are, let's say, more critical because of that. Also because of the fact that it's much harder to upgrade smart contracts than it is to do continuous integration and continuous deployments of websites or web applications in the traditional space. So yeah, these DeFi projects are all smart contracts. DeFi projects is just a collection of smart contracts running on like a virtual machine that has a bunch of user funds deposited in them, right? So what could go wrong? Here are the stats when it comes to hacks. So here we see a timeline of hacks that have happened as early as 2016. This first hack here is the famous DAO hack that happened in 2016, and that was actually when QuantStamp got founded, or the idea for QuantStamp began because this smart contract had a reentrancy vulnerability, which was exploited, and it led to the theft of 60 million worth of Ether at that time. So at the prices of 2016, the Ether prices of 2016, you can imagine how large that would be today. But since then, we've had several thousands of hacks. And you can see these bars are aggregated per month. So there was it's sort of similar to what we saw before in the bull market, when we saw more deposits in DeFi. The hacks were higher in value, and they went a bit down during the past year when we saw a bear market. But here at the bottom of the screenshot, you can see the largest amounts that have been hacked. These projects and the amounts are in the order of $600 million worth of crypto assets. And the techniques could vary, right? So you can see here private key was compromised, or there was an access control exploit, or there was a proof verifier bug. So there are various reasons for these hacks, and there are many more. In total, there were over $7 billion worth of hacked assets, and a considerable part of those were due to bridge hacks. Bridges are systems that allow you to transfer cryptocurrency from one chain to another. So from something like Ethereum to Polygon or Binance chain. And these systems are notoriously difficult to get right because they have a large off-chain component and two on-chain components on two separate chains, which need to be, in perfect harmony to avoid any hacks. Okay, so that was the intro to DeFi. I hope it was brief, but I hope you sort of got the idea. Now we can go into the main topic of this talk, which is the Kyber swap elastic exploit. Kyber swap elastic is one of those DeFi protocols that we saw before. Like, it's a decentralized exchange, actually. So I'm just going to start with the summary first. This is basically the summary given by the Kyber team in their postmortem. And you can see here on November 22nd, they experienced a sophisticated exploit, as they say. We will see what that means in the following slides. And it's interesting because this exploit was publicly visible on chain, so all of the attacker transactions were publicly visible on chain. There were so-called front-running bots, so basically scripts that people call bots, right, that mimicked the attacker, leading to even more funds that were drained. And the impact of this, there were 2,367 unique liquidity providers impacted, and the monetary value that was lost in this hack was a bit over 56 million. You can see here that the main attacker took a large part, the king's share, 48.6 million, and those mimicking front-running bots took something like 6.5 million, right? And this was all estimated at the value at the time of the exploit. So the digital assets at the time of the exploit. Since then, we've seen probably at least a 3x or 5x multiplication of those assets. So probably in today's amounts, this would be closer to 300 million of digital assets lost. Now, the Kyber swap team was able to recover some of the funds from these front-running bots, 5.7 million. Unfortunately, somewhere around 700K was not recovered. A small amount was locked in some smart contracts. They could not be taken out anymore. And the team also was able to recover somewhere around 706K worth of assets by swapping them off of other exchanges using their native token. All of this information that I'm giving you in this slide and also many of the following slides are taken from the official Kyber postmortem that you can find at this source. Now, one thing which is interesting, we saw a few charts before from DeFi Llama, which is showing like how much was deposited into DeFi. Now you can zoom in to this specific project called Kyber Swap on DeFi Llama, and you can see how the liquidity chart looks like. So you can notice that Kyber Swap already had some kind of trouble in 2023 in May, but then that was a responsible disclosure, so they nicely recovered and grew until the end of November, where the protocol was exploited. And you can see how the liquidity just takes a sharp dive, and at this point in time there are only around $213,000 worth of crypto assets on the project itself. Now there was a lot of drama around this hack. This was something that doesn't happen most of the time, but it's very interesting to see. It gives you a feeling of a sort of wild west. So After the hack was done, approximately 17 hours after the attacker started his first transaction for the hack, he sent a first message on chain in this transaction. IDM stands for input data message, so IDM. And this was a message in a transaction to KyberSwap. So from the attacker to KyberSwap. And he says, "Dear KyberSwap developers, employees, and DAO members, and LPs, negotiations will start in a few hours when I'm fully rested." And there's such a thing called crypto Twitter. I'm not sure if you guys heard about it, but it's like a crypto bubble. It's like a crypto bubble on Twitter, and everyone went insane when they saw this. So they were like, "Oh my God, this guy is so cold. He's taking a nap after he stole $50 million, and then he's gonna talk to the plebs." So this happened on November 22nd, and then on November 24th, the KyberSwap team replied to the attacker, again using an on-chain transaction message. And they said, "You've done one of the most sophisticated hacks, sir. That was high EV, and everyone missed it. On the table is a bounty equivalent to 10% of the user funds taken from them by your hack for the safe return of all the users' funds. But we know how this works, so let's cut to the chase, so you and these users can all get on with life. We can set aside the funds for the bounty to distribute directly to users. You can return 90% of the funds you took from the users to a particular address by 6 a.m. UTC on the 25th of November, or you stay on the run. And if you want to discuss in private, there's an email address that they gave him, right? And in addition to this message, there were a lot of other threats that the attacker received from different addresses. This was just from Kyber, but he also received others. And to follow up, Kyber, the second day on the 25th of November, as they indicated before, they sent another message on chain saying, "We have reached out to law enforcement and cybersecurity on this case. We have your footprints to track you. So it's better if you take the first offer from our previous message before law enforcement and cybersecurity track you down. If the situation is not fixed, a bounty offer will float to the community instead. So someone is going to, like catch him as a bounty hunter. And if you don't return 90% of the funds you took from the users to this address by 10 a.m. UTC on the 27th of November, we will also initiate a public bounty program to incentivize anyone who provides additional information to support law enforcement and cybersecurity in your arrest and the recovery of user funds." So this was like piling up threats to the attacker. The attacker sent a second message just only 3 days later, so it seems he wasn't intimidated to give over the funds. He said, "Dear executives, employees, token holders, and LPs, I said I was willing to negotiate. In return, I received mostly threats, deadlines, and general unfriendliness from the executive team. That's okay, I don't mind. I have prepared a statement concerning our potential treaty. I plan to release it on November 30th at noon UTC sharp, under the assumption that I'm treated with further hostility. We can reschedule for a later date when we all feel more civil. You need only to say the word. If not, we proceed as planned on November 30th. Thank you." So again, crypto Twitter had a field day with this, and they were like, "Wow, this guy is so cold." And on November 30th, the attacker did release his statement, again on-chain. This time it was not using an IDM because the message was a bit longer. Right? But here's the message, and it's pretty shocking. So to all relevant or interested party, I thank you for your attention and patience during this uncertain time for Kyber, the protocol and DAO, as well as Kyber, the company. Below I have delineated a treaty for us to agree to. My demands are as follows. Complete executive control over Kyber, the company. Temporary full authority and ownership over the governance mechanism in order to enact legislative changes. My current wallet address is fine for this. All documents and information related to the company, protocol formation, structure, operation, revenues, profits, expenses, assets, liabilities, investors, salaries, etc. Surrender of all Kyber, the company, assets. This is both on-chain and off-chain. It includes, but is not limited to, shares, equity, tokens, partnerships, blogs, websites, servers, passwords, and so on. And that's not it. Once my demands have been met, I will provide the following. Executives, you will be bought out of the company at a fair valuation. You will be wished well in your future endeavors. You haven't done anything wrong. A small error was made, rounding in the wrong direction. It could have been made by anyone, simply bad luck. And he's alluding to the vulnerability he exploited. Employees, under the new regime, your salary will be doubled. It will be understandable that many current employees will want to leave regardless. The employees who don't want to stay will be given a 12-month severance with full benefits and assistance in finding a new career, no questions asked. Token holders and investors, under this treaty, your tokens will no longer be worthless. Is this not sweet enough? I'll go further still. Under my management, Kyber will undergo a complete makeover. It will no longer be the 7th most popular DEX, but rather an entirely new cryptographic project. And LPs, you will be gifted a rebate on your recent market-making activity. The rebate will be for 50% of the losses you have incurred. I know this is probably less than you wanted. However, it is also more than you deserve. And finally, this is my best offer. This is my only offer. I require my demands to be met by December 10th. Otherwise, the treaty falls through. Additionally, should I be contacted by agents from any of the 206 sovereignties concerning the trades I placed on Kyber, the treaty falls through. In this case, rebates will total to exactly 0. Kyber is one of the original and longest running DeFi protocols. No one wants to see it go under. To assist with this transition leadership, I may be contacted on Telegram under Kyber Director. So there were people actually contacting the attacker and talking to him, but Kyber didn't reply, and basically they just put out a tweet the following day saying that, you know, it's an unfortunate incident and it led to the loss of around 48.8 million of users' funds, and they will do everything in their power to recover the funds and track the attacker down. And yeah, they will try to make it up to the users, basically. I'm not going to read this entire message, but they've been, you know, since then, Kyber has been trying to do different kinds of programs and things to make it up to the users, but no funds have been returned by the attacker so far, and the attacker keeps moving the funds from one address to the other on chain, which, you know, you can track by just looking at his transaction or her transactions. We don't know if it's a he or a she. But they are buying NFT tokens and depositing in DeFi protocols and all sorts of things. Yeah. Now, enough about the drama. Let's go to the actual technical analysis of the hack. So what is important to know here is that this Kyber Elastic uses a concentrated liquidity mechanism, which was invented by a project called Uniswap v3. However, the code base is slightly different, and the attacker was able to extract all of the tokens from these elastic pools in 3 swaps, 1 liquidation, and 1 withdrawal, which is, pretty remarkable number of, like, low number of actions to take for such a complex hack. And now we're going to dig into how this hack was possible. And in order to know that, you need to know that decentralized exchanges that use this kind of centralized liquidity typically express prices in units called ticks. And you have words which are made out of 256 ticks, right? And here you have a picture with a tick bitmap. And we can see a bunch of zeros and ones. And 0 means that the tick has no liquidity at that certain price point. And 1 means that the tick has liquidity, right? So it's very fine-grained, and people can decide where they want to put, at which price point they want to put in liquidity for someone else to use when they swap, right? And this was the same thing that KyberSwap was using. And if a swap occurs, it will execute the requested swap amount within the interval from one tick to the next. And if the swap uses the liquidity in that tick range, it will move on to the liquidity in the next tick, fetch the liquidity information, and continue, right? So it's in a loop. And this will be repeated, this loop will be repeated until it uses up all of the swap amount, the amount that you want to swap, or the slippage limit is reached. You can set a slippage limit that, if the price goes too far, you say, okay, I don't want to swap anymore, and you should all be reverted. Now, this is all taken from the Uniswap v3 book, which I encourage you to explore if you're passionate about decentralized exchanges. Now, there's a very nice blog post detailing the technical analysis of this hack, and we're going to go through each step of what the attacker did. So first, he borrowed 2,000 wrapped Ether. So this is a ERC20 token, which is equivalent to Ether, from a DeFi platform called Aave, which allows people to do flash loans. A flash loan is a loan that you need to pay back in the same transaction. So when the transaction starts, you take out the loan, you do something with it within that transaction, and at the end of the transaction, you need to pay it back plus some fees. And this is what the attacker used. There's a lot of hacks that have been enabled by these flash loans, because it allows an attacker to take a huge amount as a loan that typically users would not have access to, or average users. And then the attacker puts a swap request into KyberSwap for the Frax ETH wrapped ETH pool for the entire 2,000 wrapped ETH, right? And he places a slippage limit, moving the tick of the pool from -24 to 110,909. So these numbers were very closely picked by the attacker. The point here was to move the price by a tick with 0 liquidity. So at this tick, the pool had 0 liquidity. The next step was that he supplied liquidity consisting of just 0.0069 Frax ETH and 0.1078 wrapped ETH in the tick range where he had moved, the pool before. So you can see here, before he moved the price to this tick here, which we saw on the previous slide, and now he just provided some liquidity at that tick, right? Just a bit, really small. These are just a few, a few dollars. Then immediately burned some of it, leading to only, a smaller amount of liquidity in there. And this was to adjust the numbers so that the calculations used in the next swap are just right. Now, in the next swap, what he did was he did actually two things. We're just going to talk about the first one here. On the next slide, we'll talk about the next swap. So the first swap, he took 387 wrapped ETH, which is quite a lot. So this is already I'm thinking like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And he bought a small amount of Frax ETH, which sent the pool's price to the upper boundary of the tick, right? So he sent the pool's price here, and turned all of the liquidity into wrapped ETH, right? And now he does the second swap, or she, I'm just saying he, or it could be a she. The second swap was just the opposite, where with 0.0586 Frax ETH, they were able to buy 396.24 wrapped ETH, right? And this moved the price of the pool to a different tick within the range of liquidity supplied by the hacker. Now, let's look at the code. So I'm not sure if you noticed, but in the two swaps that the attacker performed above, they took 387 ETH and turned them into 396 ETH in one transaction, draining the pool for a profit of 9 wrapped ETH. This was just one thing. They did this multiple times on multiple chains, and that's how the total amount lost reached 48.8 million. But just let's look at this particular example where the profit is 9 ETH, right? How did they do that, right? The attacker basically tricked the pool into thinking it had double amount of liquidity, right? And how did they do that? Let's dive into that. So the swap is performed inside of this while loop that you see in the code snippet on the right side of this slide. And it's performed like we discussed before until a set amount of liquidity is used up or the slippage limit is reached, right? Those are the two conditions that we saw in the Uniswap book on a few slides before. Now, if the liquidity for the current tick range is used up, then we have this variable called update liquidity and cross tick, or actually the function, sorry, we have this function at the end of the code, and it will be called to retrieve the liquidity for the next tick, and then move on to the next one to continue the same calculation, right? However, we have this break inside of this nested, this sort of this if statement, right? And this if statement is executed, and so when this break inside of this if statement is executed, it jumps outside of the while loop without updating the liquidity and cross tick here. So it doesn't call this function anymore. If this break statement is met, it just jumps over this and it doesn't update the liquidity. And this is what the attacker is aiming to do, to hit this break statement without updating the liquidity, which is going to fool the pool into believing it has double the liquidity. Now, let's zoom in to that if statement there. So this if statement is called after the code has finished calculating the swap within one tick range, where this swap data dot next square root p is the price at the next tick. So the logic, in human readable form, or the syntax basically says, finish calculating the swap, and if you don't get to the next tick, you can end the swap calculation, and that's where the break would be hit, right? But the hacker was able to bypass this, right? Causing the the price to cross the tick after finishing the swap. And the hacker made the current price cross the price, the next price at the next tick, causing the while statement to terminate and prevent the liquidity from being updated, right? So yeah, this caused an error in the pool calculation and it enabled the hack. Now I know that this explanation is a bit rushed, and don't feel bad if it's not understandable at this point. It also took me several hours of reading this blog post to fully comprehend. I want to, not just present to you the abstract idea of the hack, but also more details. There's actually several other details, and I realized that we're coming up on time. I don't know. My understanding was that we should leave some time for questions. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. We will bring the mic to people, anyone who has questions.
So let me just jump over a few of the other slides that present the code, but just want to highlight one thing here. The hacker requested just one less swap than the amount of swaps that were needed to reach the tick. So this was very, very closely computed by the attacker. All of the amounts that we saw before were very closely computed by the attacker. Oh, not sure. Are you still seeing my slides?
We see the blog post.
The blog post, okay, sorry. Are you seeing the slides now?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, perfect. So let me see what's happening here, because it's no longer in presentation mode. Okay, how about now? Are you seeing the presentation mode?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, perfect. So there's another feature that the attacker took advantage of, which is an automatic reinvestment into Curve, which is another DeFi protocol that Uniswap 3 did not have. And like, this goes on and on. There's several small things that the attacker took advantage of, and it culminates with the fact that, oh, just a second. Sorry about that. Just wanted to emphasize the fact that all of this code can be summarized as an equation that you can see here. And the attacker's goal was to maximize this final price. And in order to do that, he needed to set this abs delta, which was an intermediate value used as a function parameter, as high as possible. And this basically enabled everything. But I just wanted to sort of emphasize how complex this hack was and why people were calling it sophisticated and so on before. Now, let's just quickly go over some mitigation strategies and the conclusions of the hack. Like we just discussed, it was highly sophisticated. They identified a vulnerability in the swap calculation with concentrated liquidity, and they calculated the exact supply inputs that would be able to exploit this vulnerability. And because this was such a subtle bug, it made it very difficult for auditors or other hackers to spot for a long time. Now, the lessons learned are, of course, these I'm just citing from the blog post from the postmortem on the Kyber website. They want to improve validation mechanism to have more security and not reduce gas fees, enhance security audits with multiple auditors and rigorous testing, community collaborations using responsible disclosure and bug bounties, continuous monitoring and incident response with anomaly detection, real-time monitoring, a rapid response protocols with circuit breakers, and an incident response team which is available all the time. all year long. Now, this is pretty hard to do, but I just wanted to signal that at Quantstamp we are doing that. So we have a pretty large team of around 80 people worldwide, and we have some of us have like deep academic backgrounds, um, and we've done audits for different uh, types of solutions on layer 1 blockchains, layer 2 blockchains, DeFi, wallets, exchanges, and so on. And we have at least 3 engineers for every audit. We communicate a lot, so our audits are pretty high touch, and we do very thorough quality assurance. We have a pretty comprehensive stack of things, and we have a very good team. So this is what we call managed security services. So we have reached the conclusions that audits are in themselves not enough to mitigate these risks. Therefore, we propose having several points during the life cycle of a project where people can enhance their security. And this starts pre-development with trainings and consulting and reviews. And it goes through the development with audits, but also economic modeling and simulation, and continuous audits for updates. And then during deployment with deployment audits, infrastructure audits, pen testing, and like we saw before from the Kyber lessons learned, monitoring, bug bounties, security governance, circuit breakers, incident response, and if all fails, insurance. And we have the world's first regulated insurance company for smart contracts, which is regulated in Bermuda, incubated by Quantstamp and reinsured by the world's largest reinsurance provider. And I'm just going to skip over how this works, but you basically need to get an audit from Quantstamp, and then you can get insurance if everything looks good. And that's it. So if there's any questions in the remaining time, I'm happy to take them.
All right, thank you, Dr. Banescu, for the very interesting breakdown. Let's thank the speaker.
Thank you.
Awesome, yes. So do we have any questions from the audience? Yeah, I'll bring the mic to you and then you can ask.
My question is, in what ways can regulations impact the growth and development of the DeFi space, and how are regulators approaching the new financial paradigm? So as we saw, experts are pretty vulnerable, and I wonder how regulation would impact the development of the space.
Yeah, I am a strong proponent of regulation in this space, especially because not because of necessarily what we've discussed today, but this space is riddled with scammers, and many times retail investors or users have purchased cryptocurrencies that have suffered a so-called rug pull because the people behind those projects were not properly KYC'd, and this can happen in this space because it's not regulated. If regulation would come in, I would love to see these projects and actually the people of these projects be held accountable, right, for anything that goes wrong. So that means that they would need to, in order to have such a project and launch it, they would need to do a proper KYC and register with the authorities, such that if they do a so-called rug pull where they take all of the funds of the users and run away, the authorities could track them down and hold them accountable. So this is the thing that I believe is one of the most important points where regulation should come in to avoid all of these scams that are happening in this space. And in addition to that, of course, I would like to see regulation in the security aspect of this space, where before launching a project, any project should have a very comprehensive security program in place. Hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, any other questions? Yeah.
I feel like a key aspect of the DeFi space is the deregulation. So I feel like if we add more regulation, how exactly is that going to impact the development and the growth?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I don't know how it's going to impact the development. I think it will impact the growth positively because more institutions will be willing to enter the space. I think sometimes regulation is misconstrued with centralization, but I think there could be regulation that does not always force centralization. So some aspects could be regulated, such as the fact that the people behind these projects need to be properly identified, but that doesn't mean that um, a certain government authority will control the blockchain and everything that happens on it. Does that make sense?
It does. Thanks for answering it. Do you also feel like that might scare some people away if we add too much regulation?
It will certainly scare away the bad guys, which I'm happy with.
All right, do we have any final questions? Got one here.
Hi. So you said that you guys provide insurance to such companies. No. Can you go to the previous slide?
Yes.
Think
One
number
second.
38. Okay, yeah, yeah, this one. So let's say if somewhere to happen something like this in a company like this one, Crypt, and then you guys ensure that I mean you guys would be returning that money or something like that. Because
Mhm.
you won't take their contract if they had the bug in it, and let's say they missed it in development and deployment, and you guys missed it while giving them insurance. So would it
Mhm.
be like